that's the kind of thing that I think gets the major mining companies. We talked about the theme behind copper today and refilling the pipeline. So if there are companies out there that are looking for their next big growth asset, Filo has the size and scale that potentially plays into that. So.
What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people.
I assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today.
Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
Okay, my next guest is from the Lundin Group of companies, Mr. Jamie Beck. He's the CEO and president of Filo Mining, an advanced stage copper gold exploration play in Argentina. Enjoy. All right, guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and we are searching for our next investment. Today, I'm joined by Jamie Beck, the CEO and president of Filo Mining Corp, an advanced exploration Lundin Group company. Most of my viewers are familiar with the Lundin Group, legendary name in the business. The quote I reference obviously is earlier this year, I was talking to Rick Rule and he said, Jay, if I had only stuck with 4 names in this business for my career, I would have made 10 times more money and worked 10 times less hard. When I asked him for the first name, the first one was Lucas Lundin. So Jamie, for anybody who's not familiar with the Lundin Group, give us a quick, elevator pitch history on the Lundin Group. And if you want to, your experience, their experience and history in Argentina, where your project is.
Sure. It's a fascinating history. Basically, a family-run entrepreneurial organization focused in the resource sector. So investments historically in oil and gas, all over the world, as well as mining. And you touched on it. It started with Lucas and Ian's father, Adolf Lundin. And for the early days, moving into Argentina, they picked up a property, Alumbrera, through public tender, which ultimately created the sort of stepping stone, I think, for a lot of the family's wealth. And that was a time in Argentina when it was a bit out of favor. People weren't necessarily investing in Argentina or going into Argentina, viewed a little bit as a risky jurisdiction. Interestingly, I guess that same sentiment holds a little bit today. But following that success at Alumbrera, ultimately the company was taken out. The team that they'd developed and put together down there went on and found another project, a grassroots discovery, Veladero, in San Juan province, where we're operating. Veladero ultimately was another big takeout, is now being operated by Beck, and remains one of the largest gold deposits, gold mining operations in the world. So a long history of success in Argentina, and the family's been incredibly successful at really proving that model, going into some areas or some parts of the world which might be a little bit out of favor, trying to zero in on world-class deposits, top-tier deposits, and potentially finding a way to move those forward in an area where other people or other companies have struggled. And arguably the most recent example of that, Jay, being Fruta del Norte in Ecuador, right? That was a $200 million acquisition, which Lundin Gold's now trading at over $2 billion. So they've had lots of success doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the story, isn't it? We're smart to be concerned about jurisdiction and geopolitical risk. It's a valid concern for any resource investor. But before that, and I harp on this, and I think our audience can relate, this business is all about the people. It's all about the horse you rode in on, And we talk about betting the jockey and all this stuff. The term gets thrown around. What that actually means is, you're betting on the judgment and decision-making of one or two individuals who are going to be controlling your capital. You're betting on their ability to navigate those circumstances. And the Lundin Group has, Argentina it's peanuts compared to some of the places that you guys have operated.
Yeah, no, but to give you an example, how involved he'll get. Lucas met with the new president of Argentina shortly after he won the election, and that meeting was a lot of looking across the table, saying, "Listen, this is my family business. This is what we do, but these are your resources, and we are here to help you try and extract these, try and create value, try and generate some economic growth for the areas where we're operating. But I'm here to work with you, and it really tries to create that personal relationship there. It's not a big, massive corporation coming in necessarily looking for profits. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the goal, is that everybody makes a bit of money, but the company needs to make money too, and the company needs to, and the country needs to feel comfortable that there's some real value investors behind trying to advance the project.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk more about that, because it's a lot more in the history of the Lundin Group, doing what they told shareholders they were going to do, supporting their own projects. I think in 40 years, Lundin Group has participated in every single one of their own financings. So when it comes to skin in the game and eating your own cooking, I mean, we're right there in the pocket. So, but let's jump into your project, Jamie, the Filo de Sol deposit. You guys are in the Andes. It's copper, gold, silver deposit. My audience is pretty up to speed on the macro trends driving demand in the gold, silver space. But could you open up the door in the copper sector a little bit? Because I'm seeing increased bullish sentiment, that's for sure, just in the last 2-3 months alone. And what are you seeing? What's your perspective on the sector?
Yeah, I think after arguably a decade of underinvestment in the copper space, we're starting to see things turn around. I think the theme of global electrification is not going away. Seems every day you're hearing of some new automobile manufacturer or some new government saying they're going to regulate electric vehicles by 2025, 2030, whatnot. So I think that theme of moving away from carbon-based fossil fuels and moving into electric vehicles, and all of that takes copper. All of that takes copper in terms of the actual vehicles or renewable energy that you're looking at, but then there's a huge transmission infrastructure that comes along with that. So, as long as we're continuing to see growth numbers out of places like China and Europe and the US on the back of infrastructure spending, then I think this sort of electrification theme plays really well into copper, and an area where there are a dearth of new investment opportunities, new projects coming online. Mm-hmm. All of these sort of supply demand forecasts, as much faith as you put into them, are suggesting that we're going to be faced with a pretty big supply gap over the next decade. And timelines to construction in this industry tend to be pretty long. It can take decades between the initial drill holes before you've actually got your operating permits or a discovery that could be put into production. So I think that will bode well for projects like ours that are slightly more advanced along that development pathway. But generally, I think it'll bode well for copper projects all over the place in general.
Right. So you're maybe hinting that, the giants in the space, like the BHPs, the Rio Tintos, where are they going to refill supply? And there may be an increase in M&A activity in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll probably be a bit trigger shy to begin with. The last round of, I guess, sort of major mergers or acquisitions probably didn't go as well for some of the major companies, and a few bad moves. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the next 1 or 2 years, especially where the metals prices are today, these companies starting to build up cash balances, and shareholders are going to demand, well, what are you going to do with this cash? So at least initially, I suspect we'll start to see some of that being sent back to shareholders through dividend increases and things like that. But eventually, the majors are going to start turning their minds towards, well, how am I going to keep this? How am I even going to keep our production levels at the current rates? We've seen, right. We're seeing head grades declining. We're seeing mine life depletions, and they're going to start needing to fill that pipeline. And I think that's when things will turn back towards M&A probably. Yeah.
I'm not sure the average age of today's copper mines, but it's not young, that's for sure. Maybe 25 years or so.
Yeah.
It's an aged industry. Okay, so I want to talk about Filo. Let's talk about Filo a little bit. You guys raised some money this summer, July, $40 million. You cashed up, right?
Yeah.
Fully funded for a couple of years, I would imagine. Tell me about your exploration program.
So Filo's a really unique deposit, Jay, and I don't know how much your listeners or readers know about it, but the original discovery at Filo was pretty flashy because we've got these bright blue copper oxides, which are basically right on surface. And so it was an easy, I guess, initial exploration plan. Head in there, drill off this oxide deposit. Relatively shallow holes. We're talking 400 meters, 500 meters deep. And through the early stages of development at Filo, that was the goal. This project sat within one of the other Lundin Group entities for a time. Mm-hmm. And NGEx. As they were drilling out Los Helados and Jose Maria deposits, at the end of the year, if there were a couple of meters left, we'd come back up and put a few holes into Filo. So it wasn't, I guess, a really well-established exploration strategy. In 2016, we wanted to change that, and we spun Filo out into its own vehicle. Basically, the company at the time, NGEx, was trading at about 200 million as a market cap. We spun Filo out, and NGEx stayed around the same, and Filo quickly traded up to about 150 million market cap. So it was I guess a great way to generate some value, almost a dividend to shareholders. We then raised money specifically at Filo to focus on exploring those oxides. We pieced together an initial resource. It's about 600 million tons between indicated and inferred. And in January 2019, we completed a pre-feasibility study looking entirely at that oxide portion of the resource. And numbers were robust. We were thrilled with how that turned out. Simultaneously, we were advancing some exploration on the sulfides, which we knew sat directly below the oxide resource, and we'd never really spent any time looking for them. So in 2018-19 season, we put down our first kilometer-long hole. It was hole 25, mineralized top to bottom. Grades were moderate, sort of 0.3 copper, 0.3 gold. But what was really exciting is as we moved to the north in the deposit and proved out last year, we put down another hole 32, which was 1,009 meters of almost 1% copper equivalent. So we're starting to see pretty interesting grades as we were moving to the north of the deposit at depth, mineralized top to bottom. So we're cashed up, and we see a couple of really distinct opportunities to continue to expand that mineralization at depth as we move to the north, and a few interesting geophysical anomalies that we uncovered last year through some IP mag, our 3D IP survey, as well as our interpretation of our mag work. And we're excited to get back up there and start drilling some of these high priority targets and see if we can expand the resource to the north.
Okay. So right now, Jimmy, correct me if I got this wrong. PFS right now is showing a deposit that would support a 13-year mine life, 67,000 tons of copper, 160,000 ounces of gold, 8.6 million ounces of silver. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what can shareholders expect to hear from you over the next 12 months?
Hopefully drill results. So we have drills turning on site now. We've got a seasonal exploration program that typically runs from about the beginning of November, middle of November through early April. And we've got one drill turning at the moment. We've got another one that should be going this week, and two more that are expected up there in early December. So it's about an 8,000 meter drill program we have planned this season. Again, testing mineralization at depth to the north, as well as some of these high priority geophysical targets. Expect assay results through the new year, probably starting in January and carrying into May as we get results back from the lab. So it's going to be an exciting sort of start to the new year with some news flow coming out. And if we're successful on hitting some of these deep targets, I think there's a chance we just dramatically change the size and scope of potential mineralization at depth at Filo.
Right. And as you define that resource, are you crystallizing a vision for the future? Like, are you getting prepared to entertain conversations with suitors? Are you looking at moving this into the end zone on your own? Are you married to either idea? You've got some options. It's, maybe the largest deposit or discovery in the Andes right now, up there, right? Are you married to any of the exit strategies, Jamie?
No, I think everything's on the table and open. Interestingly, I think at Filo we have those options, and that's really one of the unique things about this deposit is that we touched briefly on the oxide project. I think that's something that's well within the capabilities of the Lundin Group of companies, sort of in that $1 billion capital range. And at today's metal prices, that's a $2 billion NPV project. So pretty exciting, almost a 30% IRR. Of course, the exploration side of things and what we're piecing together here has the potential to be billions of tons. And that's the kind of thing that I think gets the major mining companies. We talked about the theme behind copper today and refilling the pipeline. So if there are companies out there that are looking for their next big growth asset, Filo has the size and scale that potentially plays into that. So, we'll continue to progress our exploration and try and hit the edges of what we think is a really, really interesting system here. If that garners interest from parties who want to come and take a look at Filo and get involved, then we completely open to some kind of joint venture all the way through a full-on takeout. Alternatively, really happy to say, listen, we've got this future potential defined now at Filo. Let's refocus on this oxide project, move that forward, and ultimately use cash flows from the oxides to define that sulfide resource and move into the next stage of development.
Okay. Now, for anybody who's pulled up a map and is having a look, it's quite a unique deposit in that you actually straddle the border between Argentina and Chile. Honestly, I don't personally know of any unique complications that would create, other than maybe, water is harder to access in Chile. But for anybody who's raising their hand saying, is it going to be more difficult to manage two jurisdictions? Any comments on that, Jamie?
Well, I think I'd be remiss not to say it adds some challenges for sure. Certainly, you're going to end up having to permit in both Argentina and Chile. But, at the end of the day, I think along with those challenges come some opportunities as well. So the binational protocol that we're part of for this project exists to allow us to travel back and forth across the border. It's there between Chile and Argentina to facilitate the development of projects like these that those two countries recognized. We're going to end up with a lot of projects right on the border here. If we don't have a framework that allows us to work together, then these projects are going to end up being stranded and nobody benefits from them. So, having access to both sides helps with our transportation corridors. We can access the project from Chile. We can access the project from Argentina. In terms of water, we did groundwater exploration work a couple of years ago and have plenty of groundwater sources identified in Argentina. It's, as you say, a big advantage for us at the end of the project. If this was entirely in Chile, then we'd be looking at having to install expensive desalination facilities and pumping seawater from the coast up to site. So having access to water in Argentina is huge. And, I guess I'd also take the opportunity now to mention, looking at a map, as you move forward, one of the Lundin Group sister companies, Jose Maria Resources, is just 12 kilometers to the north. And Jose Maria is now advancing a $3 billion project. Its feasibility study is out, and they're in negotiations with the Argentine government and trying to piece together some fiscal stability, making sure the terms and conditions of how they're operating are locked down, as well as advancing environmental permitting. So I think as that project moves forward, it's going to be a huge advantage for Filo. It's going to bring power, roads, water, all of the infrastructure that come along with these high Andes projects brought to the area from Jose Maria, and none of that's currently sort of captured in either our engineering studies or the long-term value right now at Filo.
Right. Yeah. Only 12 kilometers away. I'm actually talking to Adam today as well.
Oh,
Adam
nice.
Lundin at Jose Maria Resources. Okay. We touched on the eating your own cooking theme at Lundin Group, but just for anybody curious, Adam, talk to me about management, insider ownership, and any highlights on the cap table for us.
Yeah, it's the Lundins are always big shareholders in their own companies, and for sure that holds true at Filo. I think they currently own about 36% of issued shares outstanding, and then a strong supportive group of people that tend to invest alongside of them. Recently, we had the support of CD Capital come in at our last equity raise, and so certainly, between the Lundin family, board, management, there's a fair bit of skin in the game, making sure that I think our interests are aligned with shareholders. If this project goes well, if the company does well, we'll do well as well.
Okay, I love it. That's been the tried and tested formula at the Lundin Group. Okay, thanks, Jamie. It's been great hearing the story from you, and thank you for sharing it with our audience. I wanted them to get the chance to hear this story from you. So thanks for coming on. It was great catching up, and I hope to do it again soon.
Sounds good, Jay. Thanks, and stay tuned for results in the new year.
Okay, sounds good. We'll look forward to it. Thanks, Jamie.
Sure. Bye.